page.
All right, Manu, Caitlin, thanks to both of you. Let's discuss. Van Jones, I want to start with you and that letter from a group of Senate Democrats criticizing the testing shortage. It was signed by Mark Kelly of Arizona, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, John Ossoff of Georgia, Jackie Rosen of Nevada, Kirsten Sinema of Arizona. What do you make of this public criticism from Democrats of Biden?
If you want a friend in D.C., get a dog. It's not. The Republican Party has a leader that is not always loved, but is always feared. Democrats have a president who's loved. Joe Biden is beloved in this party, but he's not feared. What you're seeing now is a party that is willing to defy this president on his worst week, kick him when he's down, and that's a very bad sign for where Joe Biden is politically. There's only one way for him to go now, which is up. But if you want a friend in politics in D.C., get a dog.
Scott Jennings, the White House is walking back to a degree President Biden's comments earlier this week comparing opponents of election reform and filibuster changes to pass election reform to Jefferson Davis and Bull Connor and George Wallace. Here's Jen Psaki today.
Everybody listening to that speech who's speaking on the level, as my mother would say, would note that he was not comparing them as humans. He was comparing the choice to those figures in history and where they're going to position themselves if they, as they determine whether they're going to support the fundamental right to vote or not.
What do you make of it?
I mean, with all due respect to our good friend Jen, and I mean that with all sincerity, I mean, if you're not comparing them on a human level, what are you comparing them to? They're humans who did terrible things and made terrible choices and had, terrible views. And Joe Biden was casting anyone who disagrees with him as though they were them. I mean, it
or on their side. He said you're on their side is what he said. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not a side I would want to be on. If you're looking to line up history's people that you don't want to be on their side, I guess I'd put those people on that side. Jen is constantly in a position where she's having to walk back Joe Biden's comments or say, well, here's what he really meant. It happens all the time, and it's been happening since he took office. And so what I make of it is that this is a White House that thought they hit a home run and quickly realized that this was a massive swing and a miss by Joe Biden, and it seriously damaged him, I think, in Washington, but also out in greater America. I think this thing went over like a lead balloon politically, and they now know it.
And Van, that language definitely didn't win over Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, the Democrats that have been reluctant to change the filibuster rules, even though they support the election reform bills. It didn't work to change their mind on changing the filibuster rules. Is there any sort of viable path forward with any sort of election reform, you think?
Look, I should hope so. I mean, I hope at some point people can take a deep breath and step back and look at where we are. We're now in a situation where both sides don't have confidence in our election system. You have Democrats who are concerned about voter suppression, gerrymandering, and voter subversion. You have Republicans that are concerned about voter fraud. That's an opportunity to come together and get something done positively. Unfortunately, where we are right now, I think the president felt that he needed to signal very strongly to the African-American base that he was doing all that he could, and he understood the frustration there. I think he's crossed that bridge, he's checked that box, but we're now still in the same situation, with a possible double legitimacy crisis, neither side accepting the election or feeling good about it. There's work to be done to bring people together.
Scott, obviously there was an effort to overturn the election by Trump and his minions in 2020 and leading up through the inauguration of Joe Biden. Obviously there are efforts right now to, at the state level, for Trump allies to be elected or appointed to positions so that, who knows, maybe they will not allow legal votes to be counted. Do you think there's any path, because I'm sure Senator McConnell does not support such measures, do you think there's any path to any legislation that would prevent what happened in 2020, what almost happened in 2020, from being successful in 2024, something that McConnell could support?
Yeah, I do actually, and I'm looking back at the infrastructure bill model as I think about what could be possible. You know, when that whole bill started out, they had Build Back Better and infrastructure together, and then ultimately it was split, and they split off what could pass in a bipartisan majority, and that was the infrastructure bill. I think what actually has bipartisan support in Washington right now is reforming the Electoral Count Act, which would essentially raise the threshold or eliminate the possibility altogether that Congress could upend a legitimate electoral college count, as was attempted, by the way, in January. And so if you want to find something where I think you have broad support and it could be done right now and signed into law and be germane to what happened on January the 6th, that's it. And I think you would find Republican support for it.
All right, Scott and Van, good to see both of you. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Be sure to tune in this Sunday morning to CNN State of the Union. I'm going to be talking to the